All right, welcome back to class. So it looks like the exam is going to be a week from Thursday. In about, I guess, about 9 days from today, August 20th. And I'll let you know pretty soon, what to study, for the exam, which topics. All right. Anybody have any questions so far?
Sir, could you just tell us about the exam a little?
About the exam, you said?
Yes, sir.
Repeat the question. I couldn't hear you so well.
Could you just tell us a little bit about the exam? Like, if it's like a lot of problems, a little problems, or like, I don't know.
You'll There'll probably be about um, six or seven long answer problems, and there may be some true false questions. I'll let you know when I write it, but most of the exam will be long answer problems that are similar to the homework questions. You know, solving differential equations, separable differential equations. We'll be writing some little Python programs, maybe answering questions about Python code. How does it run and what does it do? Things like that. I'll try to send out some of my old exam. But note that the old exam may have Octave on it or may not have any programming on it. So,
Sir, so for the long answered questions, I mean, obviously we'll do the calculations. Would you like do you require like a justification with the calculations, if that makes sense?
yeah, you have to show all your work.
Oh no, yes sir, but like a written portion, I don't know, like explaining.
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
You don't have to explain in words what you're doing. You just have to show how you got to the answer, with your steps. I don't need to see, all of your thinking. I can figure out, what you know from the steps you put down. Don't do like the whole thing on your calculator. Make sure you write things down so I can grade your steps. And also you can get partial credit. If you make a small mistake, I can give you partial credit. But if you don't put any work down, I won't be able to give any partial credit. So things like that, like you did when you took calculus, same idea. I don't think there's any difference. All right, looks like we're waiting for one person still. I guess we'll get started. Any other questions? Okay. So today we're going to look at functions. So a function is a little program in its own right, and it can have inputs and it can have an output. It can have a return value, which is a value that it sends back to the calling program. So typically what you have in computers is you would have let's say you have your main program, and then you have a bunch of statements, and then you would call, a function, say function 1. you might pass a parameter, x, and you might want a value in return. So you might say w equals function of x. And then somewhere below, in another part of your file, you would have the code for function. This isn't the exact syntax. And then maybe it'll say return x plus x minus 1 plus x minus 2. So maybe this is your function. And it could be complicated. It could be many lines long. And it itself can call another function. You know, a function can call function 2, like a helper function. So functions are basically small programs that help your main computer program accomplish its tasks in little pieces so that you can make sense and understand things. All right, so let's try out some of these simple functions here. All right, so let's say you have a float, 3.99, and you want to convert it to an integer. So the return value is 3. So that's an example of a function. Suppose you wanted to round it. So you'd use the round function, and that would convert it to the number 4. Let's say you wanted to know what its type was. So the type of 3.99. Oh, it's a float. But the type also works on strings. So the type returns the value str. So this is a little function that determines what kind of object you have. So that's called a function call. Now, an important type of function that we're going to use in a math class are math functions, of course. So let me show you how to utilize math functions. All right, so first thing you need to do is import the math library. Okay, so if you just run this code, it doesn't do anything, and but math is now loaded, so you can use all of the math functions. So for example, suppose you want to take the sine of an angle in radians. So we can say radians equals 0.7. And then we can say height equals math.sine. Notice that we have to first say math, and then when we say that, we know we're looking in the math library. And then the dot sign means inside the math library, we need the sine function. Okay, and then we could print height. And this is in radians. Sine and cosine should be in radians. Let's just double check. They all take arguments in radians, so yes. That's pretty standard for computers. You know, your calculator, of course, you can switch from degrees to radians, And if you want to do that here, you have to use the old conversion. All right, let's say you want the number pi. Math.pi. So it's a constant that's inside the math library. Suppose we would like the square root of number 2. So math.sqrt2. So that's how you can get the square root using the math library. Though you could probably also do it using built-in exponents, raised to the 1/2 power. And you could get it there too, see? You could do simple math like a calculator. 2 raised to the 1,000th power. And as you can see, it doesn't round it. It gives you an exact answer. So that's a huge number. And it's like 400, 200 digits long. It's very big. It's a huge number. Okay, any questions so far? All right. So if you'd like to take the composition of two math functions, you could put one function inside the other. So let me show you how to do this, and then I'll give you a little exercise. The next person up will be Mr. Curtis. But let me just show you quickly how to do this. All right, so let's say we want to take well, exponential of the sine of x. Well, let me just give this to you as an exercise. So here's the example. All right, so Mr. Curtis, so how would we calculate this? Let's say x is 4. How would we calculate this in Python? So give it a try on your computer and tell me what you get. All right. Mr. Curtis is having trouble joining. Let him know that.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. It says you're joining. Oh wait, you're here twice.
Wait, why? I don't know why I'm here twice.
All right, maybe it's just a bug. It says you're in the waiting room joining, but I see you're also here. All right, don't worry about it.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Curtis, so give it a try. E to the sine of x, let x equal 4. And how would I calculate it out? Tell me if you can figure it out on your computer.
Is there a special thing that we're supposed to use for Python for the exponential function right there?
Use the name of the function, try exp. Exp
Okay.
is the is usually what's used for the exponential function.
Okay.
All right, so what would be the syntax?
So I'm thinking, would it be exp?
Well, you need to use the math. You need to use the math library, so.
Yeah, so math.exp
Okay.
equals, or
So x equals, right? X. No, not x. So just, let's call it y. All right. Exp. And what do we put inside here?
math dot sine of x, and could we make x equal 4?
Yeah, so x is 4 right here,
Yeah, it's already there.
right? X is 4 right there. So print y. All right. So you should get 0.469. Okay. Any questions so far? All right, so turns out it's very important to be able to make your own functions. So right here, we have a simple function. So why don't we code this, but we'll make it a little shorter. We won't have to write so many words of text. So we're going to make a function just like this and see how to run it. So first thing we're going to say is define print lir. I'll shorten it a little bit. Parentheses, colon. Notice that it indents all by itself. That's because we're in a block of code now. So whenever you have a colon, it has to indent. And the indentation is important. If you mess up the indentation, it'll give you an error. All right, print. Well, I like single quotes. Easier to write. You don't have to use the shift key. Text 1, print, text 2. All right, that's our function. Backspace. So now we're out of the function. See, that's how you know we're in the function when you're at this level. When you're at this indentation level, you're in the function. And now we're back at the outer indentation level. So now we're outside of the function. It probably will be a little confusing for beginners. You may not be so aware of the indentation, but Python, that's one of the strange things about Python is indentation. Makes it hard sometimes to cut and paste code.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes,
What does the LYR stand for? Like,
lyrics. It has no
you
meaning,
say, oh, lyrics? Okay.
but it has no meaning.
Okay.
You can make this any name. You can just call it my function. You just give it whatever name you want. Lyrics. You make up. It's like a name of a variable. So the function name is basically a variable. Variables can't start with numbers or keywords, or can't be keywords. But almost anything is acceptable for the name of a function. Okay, so we run this, and nothing happens, which is correct. So what you have to do is call the function. So you call it like this. You simply say, execute the function lir with no inputs. And now you see it executed the function. Now, we can also pass things to our function. We can give it a parameter. Let's call it new word. And we can also print without quotes, new word. So now we have to pass something to new word. So let's give it a word. Hello. All right. So see who's next. Miss Drennan. So what do you think would be the output when I run this code? What do you think will happen?
I'm not sure. Would it be hello?
Well, I'll give you a hint. So we're running the function lir, and we're passing it new word. So we're giving it an input of new word. Then the function will take new word with the value hello. It'll put hello into new word,
So it'd be
and it'll run as normal, and then it'll run this line of code. So what do you think?
text 1, then text 2, then hello.
Okay, so let's see. That's right. And if you pass goodbye, it'll use goodbye, right? Okay, so this is an example of passing data to a function. This is called an argument. So new word is an argument. This string goodbye is an argument. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. So I talked about the flow of execution a little bit. So the flow of execution is like this. So when you run Python, it will, see if I comment this out by putting a number sign here, it'll do nothing. What happens is Python goes from top to bottom. So the first thing it does is it sees def, that means define, and it knows we're defining a function, and it reads this function. So it sort of learns this function. It puts it in memory, but it doesn't execute the function. It doesn't actually run the function. It just learns the function. Then when you get to the first command that's actionable in the outer indentation, it executes. So the first thing it would execute is this code right here. In fact, I think it may even skip over this completely until it gets to here. It gets to Lear of goodbye, and it says, Lear, I don't know what Lear is. What's Lear? So then it looks, oh yeah, I saw that before. It's a function. Now, let me learn this function. So it learns it, and it sees it. Okay, there's a function. It needs one argument. Okay, I see an argument here. So Python puts it in to here, and then it executes this code, and then it goes to the next line. So that's the flow of execution. That's how the computer runs. Any questions so far? All right. All right, try coding this function, and we'll see how it executes in a moment. So everybody, give this a try. I'll slow down a little bit. So try coding this function here. And then I'll let you try to execute it yourself. Okay. Print twice cat. That's another function. And we need to code that function also. So see if you could write it yourself. You need to make a new function above this function called define print twice. It'll take an argument. So fill in here. And then fill in code, write driving code. Driving code is code that will run the program. All right, so print twice is just going to print a string 2 times. That's all. Anybody have any questions so far?
Sir, I did exactly what you did. I'm not getting the brackets though.
Say the question again.
I'm not. I wrote down what you did, but I'm not getting the brackets, like the output,
Parentheses or
whatever that is on the bottom. Is it supposed to be? Is that the output or?
no, I haven't run it yet because we haven't
Oh,
completed.
okay. Oh
We
my
haven't
gosh, sorry.
completed, writing it.
Okay.
So yeah, there's you should just have I mean, what I'd like you to do is in the green, fill in the missing code and fill in code to test out your functions. Write code to test out your functions. You understand the idea, what we're trying to do?
Oh yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's start. Mr. Home. All right, so let's fill in the code for print twice. We want to print twice. So what should I write here?
Well, if we want to print twice, wouldn't we write 2 times part 1 plus part 2?
You want to print it twice? I mean, there are different ways you could do it. You could say print 2 times part. Is that what you're saying? You could
Yes, sir.
part plus part.
Yeah, well, I'm not entirely sure what we're doing here. So,
Well, we just want a function to print part, which is a string 2 times. So,
times. And do we want them side by side, up and down? How do we want them printed?
it doesn't matter. Let me see what the book does. It looks like the book does it like this. So why don't we stay, I guess, consistent with the book. Let's print it this way. So we don't want to do what we wrote. So what do we want to do actually? Print part and then
So if we want to do it like that, print part, and then we
another print part, right? Print part, right? Won't that just print it line after line? It automatically puts a new line in, right? Well, here, why don't we test it out?
Yes, sir.
Let's test it out. Print twice. If you hit the tab key, it auto completes. John. So let's test it out. All right, it works, right? Okay, so that function works. Okay, and now let's try to call this function. So what should we call it with? Cat twice. Looks like we just need 2 strings, right? John, and then another string, double. All right, so what do you think will be the output? So let me get rid of this. What do you think would be the output if we do this? So, Mr. Hone, what do you think? What would the output be?
I want to say it would be John Doe, but I just tried running it and it says that I have a positional argument.
All right, maybe let's see. Maybe we have a mistake somewhere. Let's double check it. All right, so the answer is you're running cat twice. So what it does is it John part 1, Doe part 2. Then it forms cat. Cat is part 1 plus part 2. So it concatenates the two. And then it prints it twice. So do you understand it? Did you get it to work now?
Yes, sir. I forgot my my second parentheses.
All right, here's another question for you. Let's say I put the number 3 and the number 4 here. What will be the output now?
7, sir.
Well, 1 7 or 2 7s?
Well, I think part 1, part 2, cat equals, and then you're printing twice cat. You have 2 7s on different lines.
That's right. So 7 7. All right, these are the kind of questions you might see on the test. You know, answering these outputs, maybe writing your own code like that. Okay. Are there any questions so far on the Python code?
Yes, sir. So is this just like a pattern that we just have to understand for certain questions, or should we just know like the type of words that we have to use?
Well,
I'm a little
none
lost.
of these words are keywords except for the blue words are keywords, but the built-in functions are this print. So print is a function that displays text. Print twice is just a name I made up. You could just call it Z4. And you can call this function Z5. I'm not sure if this is what you're asking about, but these are just made up names, and part also. You can call this X, X, X. Call this Y, Z, Y, Z. And cat, you can just call that, W. right? I mean, is this the kind of thing you're asking about? Like as a pattern? There are patterns
Yeah.
on how to define a function. This is a
Um,
pattern for a function.
yeah, sir. That's perfect. Maybe I just need to practice it. Thank you.
Sure. I do have a web-assigned Python assignment, and I'll try to post it soon so you can start practicing this. Okay, so you see you run it, it makes no difference. You can put words here. That's a nice thing about Python. You could put floats, strings, integers, and it's very easy to use. You don't have to tell it what the type is. It can figure it out itself, and it can run it. Now, what would happen, though, if I put a string here? So, Mr. Kid, what would happen if I try to run this? So, Mr. Kid, what do you think?
So would it be 3 C4? I'm not too sure.
All right, let's see. A crash, an error, right? Because it's trying, see, it's telling you in line 6 here, you're trying to add a float and a string. See, that's the type, it's error. See?
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
All right, so here's a trick question. See if anyone could figure this one out. This, I wouldn't give you something this hard on a test, but see if you can figure this out. Let's see. All right, I think it's okay. Mr. Klein, what do you think would be the output from this?
I feel like you'd also get an error again.
Okay, well, let me give you a hint. Let's say I do 3 times hello. What's the output of that?
Would you go ahead and get like hello, hello, hello on 2 separate lines so you get 3 hellos on the 2 different lines?
So that's the answer to the original question, right? Yes. So see, if I do 3 times hello, anybody recognize that number? Somebody trying to dial in or something? 513-505-3927. Anybody?
It kind of sounds familiar.
I think they're gone now. Is everyone here? I think everyone's here. Oh, let me know if somebody's trying to get in. Okay. All right, so yeah, let's get rid of this. So I think you got it right from what you said. 3 hellos, like that. See, this is where Python, this is the dark side of Python. You could be writing a long program and make a mistake like this, and it won't crash, but it could give you unpredictable behavior. See, if you do 3 and 4, it'll give you 12. If you do a string and 4, it'll write the string, it'll concatenate the string by itself 4 times. But if you do 2 strings now, then you get an error because you can't multiply 2 strings together. So I wouldn't worry so much about that in a beginning class, but keep that in mind. Strange things can sometimes happen in Python. Okay. Any questions so far? All right, so the book calls some functions fruitful and other functions void. So this fruitful function can return a value. It can sort of give you something in return. See, we do something like golden equals math, that's square root. So that means this function has a value. It's not just doing something, it's actually returning a number for you. So that's called a return value. And some functions do not return anything, like this, the function that we just wrote. These functions don't return any values. They just do something. They're like little mini programs on their own. So I think we're going to come back to functions later on in the notes, and we'll write functions that are a little bit more complicated that return values. So that will be coming up sometime in the future. All right, let me give you a little exercise to try, just to get a little bit of practice with this. All right, write a function and drive in code that will accept three numbers and print their sum. So write a function and drive in code that accepts three numbers and displays their sum. All right, so everybody give that a try. And if you really want to learn Python, well, there's thousands of free great books, but this book is really good. It'll teach you how to do real interesting practical stuff with Python, like open up Excel files and Word files, and network connections, and scrape web pages, and all sorts of things. So I highly recommend this book. It's not required at all, but it's more practical than the book we have, and might be a little easier to learn on your own. Also, we have some Python courses that you should be able to take as electives, sometime in the future. So if you like Python, you can definitely learn either more on your own, or you can take some more programming courses here. Okay, next person up is Mr. Coe. All right, so what should we write here?
Sir, I'm gonna be 100% honest. I was really confused for this one, so
All right,
Watch the way.
all right, so I'll help you. All right, we want a function that accepts three numbers and displays their sum. So define f of, well, what should we use for the three numbers?
Man, I gotta start.
like X, Y, and Z probably.
Okay, and we need a colon here?
This is.
Yes, right, you need a colon. Okay, now we're indenting because we're inside the function. All right, and we want to display their sum. So we could say W equals, we need their sum. So how do we find their sum? X plus,
X plus Y plus Z.
okay. And we want to display the sum. So how do we display the sum?
It would be sum parentheses.
Not, that is the sum, right?
Uh-huh.
That is
So
the sum.
W.
Print W, right?
Yeah.
And
And then
unindent. Okay, now we want to test out the function. So what should we do?
it would be sum.
No word sum. We're just
No.
using the f of.
F of X to the Y.
Oh, no, just plug in numbers, right? 3, 4, 5. This is any numbers.
Okay, that makes more sense. Sorry, I just wasn't really sure how to write the.
Okay.
Want me to buy you some dip? No.
All right. So
Want some cigs? No.
let me show you another way to do this.
Mute your microphone.
Yeah, somebody, don't forget to mute. I'll mute everybody. I lost my. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, please remember to mute your phone, mute your microphone. Okay, so W, let's call this one F2. And W equals the sum of X, Y, Z. So what's happening here is you're using a built-in function called sum. And let's try calling F2 of 3, 4, 5. So perhaps didn't like this very much. Let me see. So what I tried to do is what's created what's called a tuple. I might have to explain this. Okay. All right. I guess that's the way you do it. So XYZ with parentheses, this is called a tuple. It's like a list of numbers that you just stick together into one construct. And then you could take sort of taking the sum of a list of numbers. You could also make it into an actual list. We'll learn more about this later. X, Y, Z. And then I have the parentheses around it. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually creating a list with three numbers, and I'm using the built-in sum function to take its sum. So you could see this should work too. So we'll study that later on in the course. These are called lists. So see, that's a list. And this is called a tuple. They're almost the same thing, except one uses parentheses and one uses brackets. All right. Any final questions today? All right, so I'm going to log on to WebAssign and update the homework in a few minutes. So check back, and hopefully I'll have everything set up for the exam next week, so you know what to get.
He has your eyes. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Sir, our WebAssign, mine, the license, I guess, ran out or something.
Oh, yeah. All right. I'll send an email to the WebAssign, to Cengage, and ask them to extend it. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that right away. Thank you.
See you.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.